The Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, that's like, God bless you when someone sneezes your honor. That has no meaning at all. It's totally meaningless. I mean, that's like inviting someone to a party and saying it's okay for you to come because no one will even know you're here. I mean, would you go to a party like that? Anyway, so it's okay because no one really takes it seriously in any way, shape, or form. So I had a feeling they were going to do the same thing, which they did, by the way. So we intervened. And we intervened not because we think that people are going to have a religious experience looking at their money. The only time I ever prayed while looking at my money was when I was in one of these government public parking garages, and I go to leave and it says cash only. Now this is, we're in the second millennium. Should we have automatic credit cards everywhere? This is terrible. But this is the government, mind you. So it was cash only. I opened my wallet and I'm just sitting there praying, looking at every dollar. Lord, just let there be enough money for me to get out of here. That's the only religious experience I had looking at my money. So the reason we got involved in this case is for sake of truth and for our posterity. And that is, our children deserve to know the history and heritage of our nation. Some people may not like it, but just because you may not like it doesn't mean it's not true. And history and heritage needs to be true. And specifically, let me give you an example. The Declaration of Independence. In the Declaration of Independence, it is very clear that the laws of nature and nature's God, that the Founding Fathers premised our legitimacy to break away from England. Legally, the premise was not premised upon the laws of the king because we didn't have that legal protection to do it. It was based upon the existence of the laws of nature and nature's God, which is above the laws of the king, which we the people can hold the king accountable to and can use to justify challenging the actions of the king or the tyranny of the king. That was really important because if you talk to our Founding Fathers, but for that, they would have no legitimacy. They weren't like just rebels for the sake of rebels. They were very proper people, and they had to have legitimacy and validation. So that's becoming a nation. Then we have the whole concept of our Constitution, the fundamental rights. I love talking sometimes with ACLU attorneys. I say, do you believe in fundamental rights? They go, oh, yes, I do. I say, really great. Now, what's the difference between a fundamental right and a privilege that's recognized by the government? What's the difference? And I said, what's between a right and just some law or privilege passed? And they just look sort of funny, this weird look on their face, like headlights are hitting them, And because they don't want to recognize it, but our Founding Fathers made it very clear that fundamental rights are things that are not given by government. They're just merely acknowledged because they're already there. There's something government doesn't give, government just simply recognizes. Laws and privileges are things that government creates and breathes into existence. And so, and fundamental rights are things that exist because God said they existed, they above man, and pre-existed the whims of man. So that's real important because if our society starts to think that fundamental rights are something that we can just simply change and modify and recreate at a whim, then fundamental rights have lost all the substance for which they could even be relied upon to continue. Because then they become basically acts of man and privileges, which can be rescinded at any time or twisted at any time. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen through judicial activism, attempts to do that. People say, well, I say I'm a constitutional law attorney. And they say, oh, really? What kind of constitutional law attorney? I say, well, I'm the true kind, the kind that believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it was intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed. Basically, every single judge who takes their oath of office should be an originalist to have legitimacy to be a judge. Otherwise, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're making up their own law. They're twisting it. I just saw Justice Breyer on a show talking about his philosophy, and it was really disturbing about how he was sitting there justifying how the Constitution needs to be modified and to keep up with today and the era. I'm like, what do you mean? Modified by who? By you? Or we the people through the amendment process? Anyway, I can go down a long deal. I'm not going to do that. So we see challenges there. And then we also were contacted by a pastor of a little church called Saddleback something. Pastor Rick Warren, or anyway, his office called us at the last minute, the day before the hearing, because you see, he was sued to keep him from giving an invocation at the presidential inauguration. And irrespective of people, whether people sometimes say, I don't think you should have been there. Some say, yeah, I think that they need all the prayer they can get. Whatever the case is. The legal issue, though, was whether or not it was constitutional to allow someone to pray at this event, or to allow the word God to be mentioned at this inauguration. And so we were contacted. Michael Nida was also involved in this one. He keeps us busy, anyway. And so we went ahead and filed a lawsuit. As it turns out, we actually didn't file a lawsuit. We responded to a lawsuit. And we flew out to Washington, D.C. upon the pastor's request. And we argued the case, and the judge agreed with us and cited our case, cited our points. And as you know, the prayer went on. And without editing or revision by the government, which is great. Now, it's now on appeal to the Supreme Court, along with the In God We Trust case, by the way, FYI. But what about, let me talk now, though, about, I think, what is one of the most important cases that we're facing today. It's a very, very serious case, and it deals with the healthcare law. Now, you probably haven't heard of the healthcare bill or Obamacare, so let me explain it. You know what I'm talking about. I was a finance undergrad in school. Took a lot of economics, loves finance, I love that stuff. Understanding, reading, watching the financial dailies and information, the Bloomberg, all that kind of stuff. I love that stuff, that data. And so consequently, I can tell you, I understand very well the enormity of the risk to our economy as a whole and the fiscal drain that will put upon our country alone. I understand that's huge. I also have friends of mine who are doctors in the medical profession, and the long-term impact this will have on the quality of care and the development of new techniques and new cures for diseases and things is huge. I understand that pretty well. That's huge. But the area, frankly, that I'm the most concerned about, even more than that, is the direct infringement upon our constitutional civil liberties by an overly zealous police powers by the federal government that are not supported by the Constitution of the United States. And let me explain. The Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is the Commerce Clause. And just to paraphrase it, basically says the federal government, you can be involved in regulating commerce when it involves commerce between states, or between a state and an Indian tribe, or a state and another country. You can be involved in this under those limitations. But that's it. Now, mind you, our Constitution is very unique. You see, other constitutions, like the one in France, basically it says, you, the French government, can do whatever you want unless the Constitution of France says explicitly that you can't. Our Constitution is different. It says, you, the federal government, can do whatever you want. No, it says, you can't do anything. Okay, let me get that right. You, the federal government, I'm sounding a liberal, aren't I? Sorry about that. You, the federal government, can't do anything unless the U.S. Constitution explicitly gives you the power to do it. That's why it's important. That's why Article 1, Section 8 is so important. Because the Commerce Clause is what is justified. That's the clause that is used to justify federal regulation of things in the free marketplace or commerce. And so here we have the federal government doing this. And this deals with activities, between the states, activities, okay? Well, the healthcare law, what it deals with is simply living and breathing. That is, according to healthcare law, if you are simply living and breathing in the United States of America, that's all the federal government needs to come in and tell you what to do, what to buy, what to wear, what services to employ. That's it.